My cruel parents kicked me out of the house when I was 14 because I was a weakling, but a year later, I was living in rural Arkansas, where nearly everyone works on farms. Children start working from a young age, and only a few parents understand the importance of education and allow their kids to study. I wasn't that lucky with my parents. My father didn't own any land, but he bought produce from different farmers and sold it at the market. I had a younger brother named Toby, who was 10 at the time I was in high school. Even though I didn't fully understand the value of education, I knew I wanted to be more than just a farmer. But my father shattered those dreams 2 days after my 14th birthday. He called me into his room and told me it was time to quit school. He said he had arranged for me to work on a large farm owned by his friend as one of the hired hands. At 14, I was skinny and weak, without the physical endurance of my peers, and I wasn't sure I could ever build it. This was partly because our parents barely fed me and my brother. The news was hard to take, but I had no say in the matter. I couldn't challenge their decision. That's how I said goodbye to my education. On the very first day of work, I passed out from exhaustion. I can't describe the chaos that followed. The farm owner himself brought me home and told my parents what happened, but they only cared about when I could return to work. My father assured his friend not to worry and I'd be back in the field the next day. His indifference hurt me, but surprisingly, his friend refused to take me back, saying I wasn't cut out for the job. My father tried to change his mind, but the man didn't want any trouble. He left, and my parents were furious with me for days. My younger brother watched in horror, knowing he'd suffer the same fate in a few years, or maybe even sooner. My father tried to find me another job, but word had already spread that I fainted on the farm, and no one wanted to hire me. My home turned into a living hell. My parents looked at me with annoyance, convinced I couldn't do anything right. They reduced my food portions, yet still complained I ate too much. If anything went wrong, they always blamed me. I started to feel like they'd soon complain I was breathing too much of the house's air. I thought it would be better to return to school rather than sit around doing nothing. One evening, I brought this idea up to my parents. The moment I entered their room, their faces twisted in disgust. I said I needed to talk about something important, and my father told me to make it quick. I explained that instead of doing nothing, I wanted to study again. My mom got up and walked past me, as if heading to the bathroom. While I was still talking, there was a loud slap and a flash of light before my eyes. She had hit me across the face. I stumbled back, and she threatened to deal with me if I didn't shut up. She screamed that I was too weak to work and be useful to the family, yet somehow I found the strength to go to school. Then she turned to my father and said she suspected I had been faking the fainting episode just to avoid hard work. My father gave me an ultimatum. I had to leave the house every day and look for a job, or else he'd throw me out. If I didn't start earning money within a week, I'd be kicked out. Of course, after a week of failing to find work, he kept his word. At first, they simply ignored me when I said I couldn't find a job. I didn't know they were already preparing my official departure. I was shocked when Child Protective Services showed up at our house. My parents said they couldn't care for me anymore and requested I be placed in an orphanage or shelter. The workers came to investigate whether my parents were telling the truth or just trying to get rid of me. I listened as my parents complained about tough times and claimed they could only afford to raise one child. After hearing them out, the workers said that before sending me to an orphanage, they would try to find out if any relatives could take me in. My father mentioned he had one living relative, his cousin, Uncle Jeff, who lived in the city, but he immediately made excuses, saying he hadn't seen him in years and doubted he'd be willing to help. He claimed he last heard from Jeff 7 years ago, back when he was struggling. In reality, they knew Uncle Jeff likely wouldn't want to help. He had once lived with us but went to college despite my father's protests, who still thought education was a waste of time. I remember them constantly arguing, my father accusing Jeff of being lazy. Jeff graduated from college and wanted to continue studying, but he had no money, so he looked for a job without success. My father got angry and eventually kicked him out, saying he couldn't feed him anymore. Jeff tried to explain he was doing his best, but my father didn't care. He accused him of wasting time and money on education. Jeff left for the city and never came back. And now, here's my question. If you were in Uncle Jeff's shoes, would you take in the child of the man who kicked you out and never cared to ask how you were all these years? The child services promised to contact him and find out. I was worried, thinking he'd say no, and I'd end up in an orphanage. Soon, I'd know my fate.